Last year, the Toronto Blue Jays were miraculous. This year, I'm concerned about their ability to repeat the insane run they went on. I feel like I'm being a hater. I really do. But I look at this roster, the rotation, the lineup, the bullpen, and I get concerned about what they're going to be able to do in 2026. Before I get destroyed for this take, because I know I have a lot of Blue Jays fans that watch my videos, and I respect all of you guys, and I don't want you to be mad at me before I start explaining myself. I do want to say, I will be predicting the Toronto Blue Jays to win the American League East for this season, but I don't feel comfortable taking that bet. Again, I think that they're going to win the division. I'm concerned about it though. In one of my last videos, I made it clear I did not like the Toronto Blue Jays offseason, and I still don't. But while I don't, I can understand why some people do like it. Kazuma Okamoto is a big addition in free agency, and Cody Ponce is an interesting piece as well. Tyler Rogers is a great reliever and a huge addition to a bullpen that really struggled in their World Series year. And Dylan Cease, even in a down year in 2025, is a very good pitcher that is more than serviceable at his worst, and one of the most dominant arms in the game at his best. However, I feel like losing the intensity of Max Scherzer is a major issue for this roster, especially if they do make the postseason. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa was a bigger piece of this roster than he will be given credit for, and Bo Bichette, I feel like, of course, was the second most valuable player on the entire roster outside of Guerrero Jr. And now that he's headed over to the New York Mets, I'm concerned about how this team is going to replace that production in 2026. Now, this has been negative so far. I've started out very negatively because this video is a little bit of a negative topic, but you do have to account for the fact that Shane Bieber should be returning and will hopefully pitch a full season as long as he doesn't get injured, and him coming back will help this rotation a lot. Trey Savage also proved he was one of the most overpowering pitchers in the game as well, although that was in a very minimal sample size, and I wonder if the league having some tape on him to look out for throughout the offseason, if those teams will make adjustments and they'll be able to hit him a little bit better. Maybe, but maybe not. He was really good last year. I don't think the roster got a lot worse from their playoff roster, but I do think it got a little bit worse, probably, or at the very least stayed the same while teams around it got better. I think the Boston Red Sox got better, and I know that a lot of people in my comments disagree with that, but I think they did get better. The Los Angeles Dodgers 1,000,000% got better. I think that the Atlanta Braves got better, and I think they're a really, really good team. I think that the Baltimore Orioles got better, and again, I think that the Blue Jays kind of stayed the same here. And I also forgot to mention that Anthony Santander will probably be at least somewhat better than he was last year. He was injured all of last season, and when he wasn't injured, he was just terrible. When a player has a season like that, in my opinion, it's just a wash year. Just get rid of it, throw it away, it doesn't really matter. If he's even at least 60% of what he was in Baltimore, that is a major addition to the Blue Jays lineup as well. However, I feel like this roster is due for some major regressions, and I'll get into that later in this video. Before I talk about that though, I do want to talk about how the Blue Jays found their way into the World Series in 2025. And although I'm saying I don't know if they're going to repeat in 2026, the 2025 season was not a fluke. It wasn't luck. They had a clear identity, and they followed that identity and hammered it throughout the regular season and the postseason. And when a team can do that, they're going to be tough to beat. It was clear that the Blue Jays specifically sent their season in a direction and made sure to follow it through the very end. And because of that direction that they went on, they were 2 outs away from winning the World Series. They played baseball. And they played baseball like old teams would play baseball. They played a contact-oriented offense with enough players that could hit the long ball to give them some home runs. But that was a bonus. Their goal was to make sure that they were not swinging and missing as much as possible. On the other side of the ball, it was clear that their calling card was defense, as well as strikeouts on that side of the ball as well. But every team in baseball looks for strikeouts while pitching. Some teams worry less about the defense though. The Toronto Blue Jays are not one of those teams. They were the best team in baseball defensively last year, and I think they will be in 2026 as well. Their worst defender is no longer on the team. That was Bichette. They got better defensively, and because of that, they're going to be insane on the defensive side of the baseball, and you can't take that away from them, and I'm not going to try to whatsoever. They're going to be the best team in baseball defensively again. In 2025, the Blue Jays led MLB in batting average, hits, on-base percentage. They were 4th in runs scored, 3rd in doubles, 3rd in OPS, 7th in slugging, and 11th in home runs. This offense was very, very good. In the postseason, just 3 teams had an OPS over 700 as a team. The Mariners had a 701, the Dodgers had a 723, and the Blue Jays had an 822. Yes, an 822 OPS. That is 100 points higher than any other team in baseball during the postseason. I understand that is a small sample size, but what they did in October was otherworldly. The counting stats don't matter too much because they played more games than the Dodgers did by quite a bit, and the Dodgers played the second most in baseball by a lot. But the Blue Jays still dominated the right stats as well. This was the best offense in baseball and in the postseason in 2025. There is nothing to take away from that incredible performance. Nothing. And again, I'm not going to try to. On the pitching side of the ball, the Jays were less good for sure. They were 19th in team ERA, but they were 6th in team strikeouts, which is obviously good. And they were league average in walks. They weren't bad, but they definitely weren't a great pitching team by any means. However, that's not telling the whole story. They actually got a little bit worse in the second half of the season, which is probably not what you would expect watching this video and knowing what happened to the Jays at the end of the season. They weren't top 10 in anything in the second half, not one thing. But during the postseason, things changed for Toronto. I'm just kidding, they pretty much stayed the same. Their team ERA wasn't good here either. They just weren't a good pitching club, really. Their bullpen wasn't even much worse than the rotation either, but like I mentioned earlier in the video, Savage and Bieber weren't pitching throughout the first half of the season. And that's why I'm a little concerned about this pitching staff going into the 2026 season. It wasn't great in the postseason, even when the Blue Jays were an insane team. So if the offense takes a step back at all, is the pitching going to be able to handle it? I don't know. I'm going to stay with the pitching for a little bit here because I've heard lots of people be very high on this Blue Jays pitching staff. And honestly, I understand why, but again, I'm concerned. I don't know if people realize just how meh the rotation was last season. According to the Fangraphs depth chart projections, the Blue Jays are 6th in projected WAR, which is really good. Now, I know that some people don't like WAR, and that's fine, but it is one of the better stats to look at in terms of projections. It's just a baseline stat. If you like other stats more, that's fine. But it's still worth just checking out in my opinion because it gives you a starting ground to then do whatever research you want to do from there. But if you're starting at the WAR statistic, Fangraphs really likes this rotation. They're the 6th. That's really good. The Jays are projected to be higher than the Mariners, Rangers, and Yankees, who all have really good rotations in my opinion. But look at the projections for a second here. Dylan Cease is projected more WAR than Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Blake Snell, Jesus Luzardo, Kevin Gausman, his own teammate, Nathan Eovaldi, Hunter Green, Brian Wu, Logan Gilbert, Joe Ryan, Max Fried, Freddie Peralta, Brandon Woodruff, Hunter Brown, and Michael King. Is Dylan Cease really better than any of those players? He's definitely not better than all of them, but he's projected to have more WAR than any of those guys in 2026. Last year, he was 19th in WAR, and this season, he is projected to be 9th in WAR. Is it possible? Of course. Is it something I would bet on? No, not really. I mean, he had a 4.55 ERA last season, although I will admit his FIP was a full run lower than that, which means he was getting really unlucky with a poor defense behind him in San Diego. Like I mentioned, the Blue Jays have the best defense in baseball. His stats are going to get better with this better defense behind him. That's a guarantee almost. This year, he's projected a 3.6 ERA. which would be the lowest on the Blue Jays in terms of projection. Kevin Gausman is actually projected above a 4 ERA. Savage was an absolute monster in the postseason, but look at the baseball savant in his extremely small sample size. It really isn't too impressive, and Fangraphs kind of thinks the same thing with its projections. He got absolutely rocked when players made contact with him, giving up a hard hit rate of over 60%. However, almost no one did make contact against him with an extremely high strikeout rate. He also walked a lot of guys as well, which is a bad recipe, of course. Shane Bieber was another guy that threw just 40 innings, but he was not good in those 40 innings. Well, his 3.5 ERA wasn't bad, but the Savant page was brutal. He also got rocked when guys made contact. However, unlike Savage, he did get a ton of contact against him, but his walk rate was very impressive, so he wasn't giving up the free pass. Kevin Gausman had a really good season. The Savant page didn't love him in 2025, but I don't really care. Kevin Gausman is a really good pitcher in my opinion. I think he's going to be really good in 2026, but he is getting older, so it's not a guarantee. And Cease did have the best underlying stats of any of the Blue Jays starters in 2025, so maybe he can bounce back to that top 10 form, but that's a lot to ask from any pitcher, let alone a guy who was barely top 20 last year. Cody Ponce is a complete question mark. I'm not going to get too deep into it because I don't really know what his underlying stats were overseas last year. I know that he was really good in his time overseas. Maybe that'll translate to MLB, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. The bullpen isn't amazing, although I really do like some of their relievers like Tyler Rogers and Louis Varland. I am a little worried about Yimi Garcia as well as Jeff Hoffman because Hoffman was really bad in 2025, and apart from those arms, I'm just not really sure what you're going to be getting from the rest of the pen. Brendan Little was also good for them last year, but I don't know if he's going to be able to repeat that. I don't love the bullpen, but I don't hate it. I don't think it's going to be a huge liability like it was for much of last season. Remember at the beginning of the video when I said that the offense for the Jays was really good? I'm confused about how that was possible, to be honest, and I'm a little bit concerned about how the offense is going to translate that in 2026. Just look at this depth chart to try to understand what I'm saying. How many of these players are true stars on the offense? 2? 3 maybe? Could it be just 1? I think you could make the case that there are 4 players on this roster that are star level players, but you could also make the case that there is just 1 star player on this roster. Guys could develop into stars for sure, but players like George Springer could lose their star caliber. This is the roster right now. George Springer, Addison Barger, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Anthony Santander, Alejandro Kirk, Dalton Varsho, Kazuma Okamoto, Ernie Clement, and Andres Jimenez. See what I mean? Or am I wrong here? Please, seriously let me know because I genuinely feel like I'm losing my mind with this offense. It was so good last year, but what is this lineup? It's not that good, right? Will their dominance carry over into 2026, or will it just stop working? Seriously, I think the Blue Jays are being overrated by fans and the media right now, but I really just don't know. It's almost the same roster as last year that was so good, but it's just not that good on paper. I feel like I'm going a little bit crazy. Springer was really great last year, truly a bounce back year that made him one of the best hitters in the league again, and it was really a career year. But the 2 years before that, he regressed to a really tough level. He had a 102 and a 91 OPS plus the previous 2 seasons, which makes him just league average in 2023 and below league average in 2024. But then in 2025, as a 35-year-old man, he had his best career season with a 161 OPS plus, making him 61% better than a replacement level player. How did that happen? Look at the Savant page. In 2019, he had a ton of red and was very good. Then he slowly regressed until he reached 2023 and 2024, where basically everything was blue. Then look at 2025. It looks like 2019 again, but even better. How could this have happened? I really don't even understand. Addison Barger hits absolute tanks, but his OPS was only 105, so he was basically a league average hitter. Vladdy is one of the best hitters in the league regardless of what the stats say, although the stats also back up what I'm saying regardless. Anthony Santander was basically the opposite of Springer last season. He went from 40 homers in 2024 to a 57 OPS plus in 2025. I mean, he was incredibly bad as a Blue Jay, but if he bounces back to being a 40 home run guy, this offense can unlock a new level of dominance. But can you count on him to bounce back? And if you can you count on Springer continuing to be one of the best hitters in the league again? They'll need both of these to come true since they lost Bichette, who was obviously one of their most valuable players on the team, and is part of that no swing and miss approach that they had so much in 2025. Kirk was really good for the Jays last season as well. He's one of the best catchers in the league in general. Obviously, this is a bright spot on the roster, but in 2024 and 2023, he was a below league average player. So this is another player that just jumped into elite status basically overnight. I mean, this team just feels like the 2017 Astros in terms of how many players just magically got good. I'm not saying they're cheating, by the way. It's just incredibly impressive how many players had career years in 2025 for the Blue Jays, regardless of their age, experience, or anything else. But with that being said, career years might be one-offs, or they might be what that player is going forward. Is George Springer really a 160 OPS guy for the next couple of years? Is Ernie Clement actually what he was in the postseason? Or was that just a short stretch of a good, talented baseball player being really good and playing above what he really is? It's impossible to know until 2026, but there were so many outlier seasons that it's hard for me to assume that they're all going to remain that way in 2026. Another one of those guys is Dalton Varsho. 20 home runs in 71 games. How? He was the opposite of what the other Blue Jays did. He didn't really get hits, but oh my god, did he have home run power. I don't know if Dalton Varsho is really a 40 home run guy if he plays 160 games. I don't think he is, but he was last year. Okamoto will probably be really good. His NPB stats are ridiculous, but we've seen players like Masataka Yoshida be really good in NPB and just be average players or below average players in MLB. But I do believe in Okamoto. Ernie Clement, I don't think I believe in offensively, but he just had the best postseason in MLB history in terms of overall hits. But it's Ernie Clement. He does make contact. That is the one thing that he does. Look at the Savant page. He refuses to swing and miss, but he also refuses to hit the ball hard. He's one of those players that are just the perfect Blue Jay for the 2025 approach. But will this be able to be as effective in 2026, or will it not work again? That's the question I keep asking myself every time I look at the Blue Jays. Clement is also incredible defensively. That's not going to change. Andres Jimenez is a Gold Glove caliber player, but that guy cannot hit at all. You're not looking for anything offensively. Anything you get out of him offensively is a pure bonus. So do you understand why I'm confused after what I've talked about? Again, personally, I still think this Blue Jays team is the team to beat in the American League, but I do not feel confident saying that at all. And I really wonder if I'm alone here, because everyone seems to even think that the Yankees are better than the Blue Jays right now. I don't think that that's the case, because the Blue Jays just destroyed the Yankees in the playoffs, and I think that the Yankees got worse. At least they got more worse than the Blue Jays did. So I don't think that that's true, but I don't think that this Blue Jays team is like a guaranteed they're gonna win the American League East like I feel like a lot of people are saying it is. Maybe that's because I'm more on Red Sox Twitter and Red Sox fans are very pessimistic right now, and the rest of MLB doesn't really see the Blue Jays as clear favorites in the American League East, but from what I've seen, they're the clear favorites in the American League East, and I don't know how much I really agree with that as like a clear favorite. Again, they're my favorite, but I just don't feel super comfortable saying that. I've said that so many times, I'm sorry for repeating myself, but I would love to know what you think, because I really just feel like I'm going crazy. Every time I look at the roster, think about what they did in 2025, and think about what they're going to be in 2026, the pieces don't align. They feel like they don't come together in a clean puzzle whatsoever. It feels like the pieces just don't connect. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Blue Jays are going to win 105 games in 2026, or maybe they're going to suck. Maybe they're going to win 80 games, and guys like Ernie Clement are not going to be what they were last year. It's impossible to really know. That's why predicting is fun, and that's why I hope you're not too mad at this video if you're a Blue Jays fan. I'm not trying to bash your team or anything like that. I'm just trying to understand what this roster is. I think it's such a unique and interesting roster, and I'm really glad that it's built the way that it is because it's completely different than what other teams are. And I think that's in a pretty good way, but maybe it's not. Anyway, if you enjoyed watching, leave a like and consider subscribing. Thank you for watching till the end if you're still watching to this point, and I'll see you in the next video.